All right, the M16's done. There it is. Shoots 325, 320 with 2.5s. I didn't have any misfeeding. Shoots about 21 to 22 BBs per second with a nice NC Star scope and Mad Bull Gym Tech type mock silencer. And it does have the Murph 3.2 in there, so it's all nice and good to go. Could upgrade the spring if I want to. It's just a crummy spare, but not for now. It has that pressure plate in the front. So now we're going to work on the AK. I've never worked on an AK before, but I've worked on version 3, so this should be no big issue. We're going to go ahead and take this apart.
Start in place. Start your wheel through the control. Your left is around some areas, so here, inside. Almost seems to be close to your inside, just this one. You can see the distance. So, just use it to take. This is the so check it out. This is not 15. It's not your own part, so it's it looks like there's a hole for that, so maybe that. This is first. And this up here. You can see how these switch mounts are easy. It's a bad thing. It's not sure. Some people actually use older, some people have never part over time. That's enough. This is really nice stuff. Last two batteries. Not full. Last two batteries. So the later type swing. What is here? Just swing to this. Just stuck on here. Where is that stuck on here? Big thing, so just release. Yes, I'm correct. Okay, so this one here.
If it comes from the grid, it could be from coal. How did it get on the grid? What was the initial source of energy?
Wow.
And coal is a fossil fuel too?
Jeez, Chris, you're gonna be like, what the freak?
Swamps.
Check this out.
Would be more like, see, oil
There's
is
a
more
piston
places
with
for, like, seeds.
there's a piston with a
Coal is more
shim
places
in
like
it.
swamps.
How the hell does that happen? It's inside there. Part of the piston has been broken off in the back here too.
However, Earth's climate system consists
Has some
of
shaving in the teeth.
set of positive and negative. Here's the biggest thing, right? That we have a complex set of positive and negative feedback mechanisms.
Just to show
that are
again,
not fully understood, and
you can see here.
therefore, change on larger temperatures can
See, it's
be
broken there, and then
I
this
think that's the biggest thing.
this
Positive and negative
shim is just
feedback loops that we do not understand.
jammed inside it.
So upset because we know how
The inside looks like that, and then here's the teeth. So that's kind of funky.
Okay, I just got done shimming. And we're going to compare the shims just to show. It spins the same on both sides. If I hold the cut off, it will spin a lot better because it's bumping into the cutoff. So we have clearance between the spur gear and the sector's clearance from the cutoff. And I want to show a few things here. I want to do one last test. The only thing I haven't tested is the tappet plate. So I'm going to go ahead and open up just for that real quick. And the shims look to be, to me, very different from what I've used as far as size goes. So I'll open this up here. They're glued in on the bushings. They have the cross shape. See there, cross shape. Then on this side, there's a little too much movement for the gears until they get this gearbox closed down. That kind of holds them straight. There's a lot more movement because I think of the cross shape bushings. Alright, tappet plate. Not cool. I'll get that later. I don't need it right now anyways. I gotta add an O-ring to it, so. It looks like there's a hole to the tappet plate. And it's full of grease. Look at that. I don't know why they have a hole like that, probably for injecting it, I'm not sure. Although, I don't know why you would put a hole in something that part, but definitely wouldn't want to put a hole in something that's flimsy being pulled back. I don't know why that's there. Alright, so go ahead and put this back in. Make sure that the shims are not lost. Let's see how far back the tappet plate goes. All the way back. There's a much longer delay than usual. I don't see a reason to have a delay clip right now because it's a pretty long delay. The tap-up cam is a little different, and the back of the fin here for the tappet plate. So as it pulls back again, it comes back far enough, and then it starts to go forward. I mean, it's still a pretty good delay. If you notice that the size is different too, zoom up here and kind of show. Where's this thing at? I always get confused here. Right here. Okay. Alright, so the size is different. You can see it right there. The tap-up cam is bigger. So I don't see how you're going to put a delay clip anyways. But it seems to feed very well from there. Alright, close this up. And screw it down to make sure that the tap-up plate can move. I already checked the piston earlier. I checked everything except for this last part. And how much clearance does it have? Where's the flashlight? It has, looks like to me, no clearance. Even though it spins without, oh, never mind. I have to get really close to see that there is more clearance than I'm thinking. Yeah, there's plenty of clearance. There's at least 0.1, maybe 0.2. Sometimes I'm just not looking at it close enough. Anyways, let's compare the shims, because these shims, to me, look like they are totally wrong. Okay, I'm going to explain a few things here. The spur gear is at the highest it can go to mesh between the two teeth, two gears here, the bevel and the sector, and I think it's a 0.2 millimeter on the spur. This is at the highest it should be going. Excuse me. This is at the highest it should be going, because if it doesn't go high enough, it doesn't get above the cutoff, and it doesn't get above the spur gear. What happens is the gear's like this, and this gear is too low. So even though it seems to ride with the teeth very well, the teeth have a little bit of a lip shape at the very bottom. So it's actually grinding slightly into it. So you need to go a little bit higher to remove the friction. And the way you can tell is when you spin it. When you put more shims on the bottom of it and you check the spin again, you feel that it's a lot looser. So that's the correct spot it's supposed to be at. Also, on this gearbox shell, they automatically for you have removed the tappet rail, which usually I have to do by myself manually, so I'll show you that they have done that already. See here? They have removed it right there, so that your sector gear tap-up cam cannot hit right into that. So that piece right there cannot hit into this because it's gone. It's shimmed away from it, but it just cannot hit into it anyways. They have taken it off. I'm sure that they kind of understood that that could be an issue at some point. So it is gone. Move these to the side real quick. Okay, so let's compare the shims and show what would be wrong if they were whatever it is. Alright, so get out my caliper here. And the first thing we're going to check, the motor height was incorrect too. There was a huge gap of space. Here's the motor, and just to demonstrate where it was, take this gear out, put it in this shell, and where it was is it was something like that. So just so you can see, there was, excuse me, it's like this. can see that because of the shadow. Damn it. This is when you just want to use this, what light you have in the morning. Basically, guys, it wasn't high enough. That's all I'm going to say. I need to get better lighting. Okay, so it wasn't high enough. I adjusted it so it was high enough. And then I don't think that there was enough shims underneath the bevel gear to make it down onto it. Okay, so here's what we're going to show. Whatever this is the bottom of the bevel gear. So what they have is 0.30. Okay. What I have, which is correct, is like, I think, 0.5, yeah. It's 0.5, so a 0.2 millimeter difference. Now, that's not so bad because the gear was, the pinion gear was down lower. Because of that, 0.30 would probably been okay, but it wasn't meshing with the teeth correctly. It wasn't as high as possible as it's supposed to go. So now it is. Now let's check the top of the gear. So there's a 0.2 millimeter difference there. Now check the top of the gear. I think I have 0.3 or 0.4. No, I have 0.3. I think. Now that I look at the gear, the shims, so I see what color they are. Okay, so put that down here. What they have looks like it might be a 0.3. Yep, it is 0.3. Okay, so that part was okay, but there was a 2.2 millimeter difference within the bevel gear to the pinion because of the height difference. So that's not too bad. Okay. So the next is going to be the other parts, which I think are going to be a lot more unforgiving, especially the spur gear to the sector, which I'm going to show in a minute. So we'll get all these shims back on here. Okay, so this is okay. Alright, so now we go to the spur gear, and on the bottom of it they have, looks like to me, another 0.3, which it is again, another 0.3. So maybe they think numbers should be 0.3 for some reason so far. So let's pull this out. And on the top here I have, I think 0.6. Let's check. I think it could be 0.7, but I think it's 0.6. That's 0.7 on the top. Yeah, it is 0.7 because I remember now it was 0.6, but I took one off the bottom and put on the top to make it 0.7. Alright, so that should be 0.7. This looks like another 0.3, which I'm not sure what they're trying to do there. Another 0.3. So obviously they're sticking with 0.3s, it looks like, and that was terrible right there because that left a lot of space to move. A lot. So 0.3 to 0.7. There's 0.4 millimeter. Nope, because the bottom was 0.3. There would be if this equals 0.6, then this is 2 plus 6 equals 8. So there's another 0.2 millimeter of space on the spur gear. Now, since the spur gear was at the right height, however, that 0.2 millimeter space would leave the spur gear to move into the sector. So there's actually what looks like to be signs of that right here. There's some spiraling on the gear. So what could happen is, as the sector gear is rotating on the spur gear, the spring is causing the gears to move left and right inside the shell. So they go like this, and as they're spinning, they get a little too close and they touch and they scrape, which can be shown here also within the circular line of the spur gear here. So it's scraping down into. So that's a bad thing, but it wasn't enough to cause failure, especially at the low rate of fire this gun had. Alright, so we're going to pull this out and now do the sector gear. Alright, so on their bottom they have 0.6. So for some reason they think that they only need 0.3 millimeter shims. And then on the top is 0.3. So for some reason they think they only need 0.3 millimeter shims. Now we're going to look at mine, and on the top here I have oops, looks like it might be 0.7 millimeter. It looks like. No, it could be 0.6. It is 0.7. And then check the bottom here. Should be 3 shims. I get 0.50. Should be 0.2, 0.2, 0.1. 3 shims, yep. Alright. So, on the bottom they had 0.60. And I have 0.50. Well, on the top they had 0.3. And I had 0.7. So, again, there's a 0.2 millimeter difference. And this is probably the most off shimming I've seen, with just the weird numbers of just having 0.3s. I don't know why they only had 0.3s. So I guess it would make sense if your gears were made to the 0.3 standard. So there's a 0.2 millimeter difference between these gears and between the bevel and the pinion. And then the height too. Now, the sector gear here, since the bottom was, we said 0.6, it's up one higher, but this one was also out one higher, so you could still have that scraping which was displayed on the gear. Now, since this was 1 millimeter higher on the sector gear, it would be almost touching this, but I don't think it was. Clearly, when I checked it, it looked like to be 0.1 millimeter, 0.2 millimeters, those space. So there is the comparison in the shimming, which is not too bad. It's not the worst I've seen. I've seen much worse. So I've seen where the spur gear and the sector are actually grinding so bad into each other. Why isn't it broken yet? Is kind of the question. Alright, so let's keep finishing this up. I did the angle engagement correction with 3 of the pads from the cylinder heads. So I've got 1, 2, and then, well, actually that's the original down here, so there's 3 of them all together. It's the original, and then I super glued 2 on because the angle of engagement was absolutely terrible. And I say that, I've got great compression now, right after the port. There's the port. so we got great compression. However, the angle of engagement was like at the 11 o'clock, which it isn't anymore, thank God, because that could have been failure, especially at higher speed or just constantly shooting at some point, depending on spring upgrade or not. Just a bad angle of engagement. That's probably the worst thing in here was the angle of engagement. Okay, so let's go ahead and move that there. And just to show where it is now, since the spring is not very strong, it pretty much stays at the exact spot. Alright, so here we go. As you spin this here, I'm going to have to shave that tooth down. But as you can see here, that's where it is. So it's practically the 12 o'clock spot, dead on. So we have to shave this tooth down and this one slightly. I could let it shave itself down, but I don't think we're going to do that. So we've got some breakage at the back of the piston here because we saw the shim was into it. How to explain that? I think I can explain that, which was very interesting. At first I thought that the gearbox hadn't been opened, and then from what I could tell, there was just enough space for the bushing to move. They were not glued in, they were kind of wiggling a little bit. Explains why the sector gears one was wiggling a little bit, because there was 0.2 millimeter space in all of these. However, the bushing was still on top of the area, so how did the shim get out, right? Well, the shim, I think somebody took this apart, tried to put it back together, and they missed the shim, leaving it in the gearbox. They somehow dropped it while they were putting the gear in, left it in the gearbox. The gearbox rattled during shooting, shim came up here, and this was hitting into it. The reason I think so also is because I can't find the plastic that is broken off here. So where is that? It's possible it could have flung out of the gun at some point. However, there's the big however. I didn't film this part, but when I went to take this apart, which is the trigger contacts, this is the housing. When I went to take it apart, there was no screw holding it in place. Well, there's a hole here that allows the screw to be in place, but there was no screw to it. So what that leaves me to believe is someone was actually in this gearbox because they forgot to put the screw there, and the shim actually was doing whatever it wanted to in here. So how does the shim fall off the belt, the bushing, and get in here while the bushing's still on the gear? See, that doesn't make sense. Plus the damage that's gone, where is it? And then the screw to this is missing. So I honestly believe someone else was in this gearbox, but they didn't do much of anything and just shut it, because 0.3 millimeter on all these shims, I honestly believe that's what came from the factory. But that's this was previously opened. It had to have been, or else the factory worker had to be really had to really do all those things. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and get this back together, and then do some some work on the housing to get a MOSFET. And so I'll do some cutting here and pretty much get everything else to go. It's looking good, and I guess I'll catch you guys later when I do a video showing this being shot. So this will be for the video for now. So I'll hit you later. Bump you with a fist.